Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a very special edition of Outtakes with Fiore. We have a Comic-Con coming into town, third year for the Comic-Con. We have the originators of the Comic-Con to talk about it all today on a special edition of Outtakes with Fiore. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. You know, Comic-Cons are huge. And of course, as soon as you say that, everyone thinks of the major Comic-Con that's in San Diego. And, it's on TV shows. Everybody talks about it, what have you. But for the last 3 years, we've had a rather interesting Comic-Con right here in Pittsburgh. I'm going to hold this up. This is the Three Rivers Comic-Con, and this is going to be the third year that this Comic-Con is being held. And it has a slightly different approach to Comic-Cons as the way Comic-Cons have been going. Let me please introduce to you my special guests for this episode of Outtakes. Todd McDivitt, who is the owner of New Dimensions Comics, all 6 stores. And joining us also is John Engel, who is the manager of, can I say it's one of the biggest stores that you own?
John is my general manager, actually.
There you
He
go.
oversees them all.
Oh, there you go.
Yes,
So
your answer is still yes.
And that store is the one that's out at Century 3 Mall.
That is our largest.
That's the largest store, right? So John and Todd are here to talk about the Three Rivers Comic-Con. This is the third year of the Comic-Con. And since I teased it that way, gentlemen, let's start out with what makes this con different than, say, the Steel City Con that comes into town occasionally.
We kind of hit on it. You were saying that we do have a bit of a different approach to Comic-Cons. I would argue we have the original approach to Comic-Cons. This is kind of how they started. It's been very funny for us over the decades I've been doing this to see the word Comic-Con become more and more commonplace, and it's just part of our grammar now. And it's extra fun to see kind of a civilian, maybe somebody I would meet at the bar, for example, they hear the word, and they have the same sorts of impressions that you talked about. That it's maybe talked about on TV, or they see a blurb in the news of a bunch of people in costume, and certainly the bigger cities get a lot of that kind of attention. But what's happened is there's been some different elements to those in different areas, like the costuming, for example. It's something we embrace as well. It's a lot of fun and a nice spectacle, so we would...
That's the cosplay you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That's another word, that's just kind of a made-up word that has become more and more commonplace. But when we started this, I've been in the comic book business. Comic books are what we focus on. We carry other things, of course, but we wanted to have it be back to its roots and focus on comics. And I think this is the first year we decided to adopt a bit of a slogan, putting the comics back in Comic-Con. And it's kind of a simple mission, and with each decision, we try to stick with that. We stray here and there, but for the most part, we are overwhelmed by the response from artists, vendors, publishers.
We will have at the end of all said and done 35 different vendors, 4 publishers, and 117 artist alley spaces.
Wow.
All taken up by everybody from legends of the field like Ron and Pat to publishers like Dynamite and Valiant, and to guys that are up and coming and trying to make a place in the world for themselves right now. So it's a little bit of everybody.
Probably before we get any further, we should let everybody know where this is going to be held.
Sure, it's in West Mifflin. It's not in Century 3 Mall. It's kind of attached to it, though. I can't remember what it was most formally, but it's near where the Old Mexico restaurant was. I think it's just moved out in the past month. Basically, when we were fishing around for space, we found this, and we already had a relationship with Century 3, having a store there. At some point I said, why can't we just rent a giant vacant department store? And it's the same size, it has almost all of the same function that a convention space has. And our first year was a bit of a challenge. Some people were like, this sounds a little Wild Wild Westy. And I said, well, I think I got this figured out. You know, there's some components we need to do. We have to bring in tables, for example, and we have to stock the restroom ourselves. You know, there's some things that some grit to it, but at the end of the day, it's the size we needed, and it's a giant space, and it's got a couple of little separate rooms we use for panels and gaming and the cosplay contest, and we have some extra ideas for this year. So this will be our third year in that same spot. I think eventually it'll grow. Like I said, we're bulging at the seams with that kind of space now. So we don't know what the future holds, but we certainly had a long-term plan to continue growing this thing. But at the same time, we start changing. People get kind of comfortable, especially third year. They're like, oh, it's the same place. I know how to get there now.
Yeah.
Both vendors, attendees, our guests, and people just trying to find it. Now they know where it is, and we put a bunch of signs up, of course, to make it a little clearer.
Sure.
But so that's where it'll be.
And we talked beforehand, and you almost hit the roof when I asked. But I think it's important to ask this question.
I'm ready.
Oh man!
You said you weren't going to grill me.
No, I'm not going to grill you. I did, but there are some people out there who I'm sure are just like me. Indeed. That they have read the newspapers and they've heard that Century 3 Mall is basically Armageddon. It's closing down. It's going to be Zombieland soon, and nothing is going on in there. And when I asked you about it after one of the screenings, you kind of blew a gasket.
That's because I know you well. I can be candid with you.
But I think for the sake of the audience,
Certainly.
who have read those same stories that I have, and they certainly have been
Right.
one-sided toward the very negative. Why don't you go ahead and set them straight? Let them know that New Dimensions is fine in there, and what's the story is with the mall location.
And sort of worse, obviously with the convention coming in the same mall.
Sure.
Technically, we've had to deflect that same sort of thing even probably doubly as much. But the reality is, I think we've had, since we've been in there, the mall has had, I want to say 4 or 5 different owners. What I always say is whoever owns it wants my money. So they're not going to, unless somebody decides to turn it into an airport or something crazy. But up to this point, part of whatever allure it has for a future owner is whatever amount of income is generated. And we're part of that income. So there's that. I take this much pride in the fact that having this convention there brings traffic into the mall. It's unfortunate that there's not a lot of stores there to benefit from that. But I think it was last year we had tenants, stores that are in the mall, not us obviously, come to us and they said they hadn't done that well since Black Friday. So we're bringing thousands of people, not into the mall, but like close enough. And if they've got some time to kill, they're going to stray and maybe buy something somewhere else in the mall. And so, it's not my job to market the mall. It's not my job to bring traffic into the mall. But, if that helps it be a little stronger, they've been kind to me. I'm happy to do my contribution back.
Sure. That's a really nice store out there, too. It's a lot of room, a lot of different stuff in it. And,
And we, what I always say, too, is we're in a region that needs a comic book store. And that was the decision to put it there in the first place. Even when we entered there in, I forget the year, I want to say 2003, 2006. You don't know either.
No, it would have been.
It's been north of 10 years easily.
Yeah.
It was struggling at that time. And we were on the 3rd floor, and you had to really come find us. And we had a big space there. And it's really about kind of the size of the store and the region we're in. And that's what's, we're a destination-oriented business. I think a lot of what's in there might be the same. There's like a uniform store, things like that.
Yeah.
It's just worked great for us. It's our best store most months. Once in a while it's neck and neck with our Pittsburgh Mills store, which is a similar size, and truthfully, Pittsburgh Mills has just sold again.
Yeah,
I think
last week.
It's just when I blew up at you, it's just such white noise to me. Like, oh, Century 3's in the news again. Oh, it got sold again.
Yeah.
If something horrible happens and we're knocked out, we're structured in a way that they can't boot us out of there in a day's notice. So we'll have time to make an adjustment if needed.
Yeah.
And on occasion we poke around and look, but for the most part, things are cruising.
And everything's well.
And a lot of the times when these types of things happen, people think they're closing it, but normally it just changes hands and somebody else just keeps it going
like
anyway.
the bankruptcy word gets tossed around. Like a big beer fan, as I'm sure we'll talk about, a local brewery just filed for bankruptcy. Bankruptcy doesn't mean you're going out of business, but that's what everyone thinks it means.
Yeah.
It just means a restructuring of how you're going to pay off your debt. And if you owe a lot of folks a lot of money, there's a way that you need to kind of legally deflect that. Honestly, I don't know it extremely well. I think it was class or two when I went to business school, but it's been long forgotten. All I remember was it's not the end of the world. So.
Yeah.
So we are not at the Armageddon stage of the end of the world in Century 3.
Okay, so
quite yet.
So we've covered that. We know
Right.
everything's good there and everything's fine.
We have cases of water, though, in canned food, in case there's a problem. We're
I
going
guess you have to hunker down. Huh?
That's right.
Let's get back to the con. When you read, well, these are the little promotional things that they give out, and amazing guests, it says on the back here. And then it has a list of a ton of people just... This is very different from some of the other Comic-Cons who are basically advertising, people who starred in schlock-B horror films like back in the 60s or, the San Diego Comic-Con has become nothing more than a giant publicity stage for all the Hollywood studios nowadays. It's, that. But these guys, talk a little bit about these guys that you have coming in, who they may be. Well, we know Ron Friends is on there, so we know he's going to be there. But talk a little bit about some of these other guys that you've managed to pull in and how they relate more back to your original idea of returning comics to Comic-Con.
Wow. There's not much more to say. Maybe I'll let John cover some of the individual folks, but like as a general statement, a lot of it was just... I've been at this for 32 years now, and I've made a lot of great friends. And, pun intended, Ron Friends. We do all the time around him.
Friends of friends.
Included. But there's some stories I could tell that are not fit for camera. But anyway, not about Ron. But anyway, made a lot of great friends. And when I started this too, in addition to wanting to be focused on comic books, I wanted to have, and the beer plays into this a bit. I joke all the time, it's just a big party. And the first year I was like, I'm going to lose a ton of money at this. And I did. And I knew I wanted to do that to kind of establish it. But I wanted everyone to have a good time. And I knew, even for me as a vendor at other locations, other cities, when I am on the other side of the fence, if I enjoy myself and maybe I don't financially, have a giant big bag of money to take home at the end of it and pay a bunch of bills, but if I have a good time, good people, I'm coming back. And every year I've got my half dozen at least that are not to be missed in my ranks. I wanted to be that convention too. And I think the Pittsburgh market's a tough one when you compare it to another big metropolitan area. Some people joked that we, with the chain of stores, have spoiled the customers here. So somebody from like a Baltimore or Philadelphia or Chicago will come in with their wares priced at what their market is, and it's hard to compete with what we're pricing things at for Pittsburgh. But at the same time, they all seem to do pretty decently as well. So it's kind of fun for me to hear that. We do a lot of bargain sales. I'm digressing here. A lot of dollar comics, a lot of stores. And with that, I've had some customers thank me. They say we have much bigger collections because of what we do. Maybe they'd only have half as many comics, but they can afford to buy a lot more because we do these kind of events. But I'm really derailing from the original question, I suppose. Sorry.
Well, that's all right. It went off a little bit, but that'll feed another one.
Very good.
If you're looking at the previous two Three Rivers Comic Cons that you have had that you have done, I hate going into perfect tense because it always messes you up. As you anticipate this year's, what are the elements that are different and that you're really looking forward to?
I think we've hit a bit of a stride. So again, that first year, put a lot of resources into it to kind of establish it firmly and quickly. And that's only half the game. And I knew I wanted people to walk away saying they had a fun time, having good things to say about it. Word of mouth is everything in this business. So we've had the good fortune that some of the nicer names on our guest list found out about it through an artist friend that they have. They all talk with each other. And because of that, have approached us and has said, hey, we'd like to be there. We hear you put on a really cool event focused on comics. Guess what? Comic artists like hearing that. They don't like to be second banana to a bunch of celebrity guests or whatever else other conventions are doing. So I think I'll be interested to see that stride. So for John and I making each other crazy these last couple of weeks, and we got another week to go, John. We're almost there. And that's also why I involve beer. So smooth the edges a little bit. But it
actually makes it better. It doesn't make it worse.
So all these people that are on the back of this card,
and that's
I can actually.
These are not just all of Todd's friends. These are some serious artists in here, right?
I can actually kind of duel those two questions together.
Okay.
So, part of my job is I get to go to these other conventions and kind of be the ambassador for Three Rivers. And part of my job while I'm there is, hey, I run a show in Pittsburgh. Here's my card. Come check us out. We don't do this, that, or the other thing, but we do these things. And you're friends with this guy, and this guy told me to talk to you. So, much like how Todd has grown his roster of friends over the years, I've kind of gone out and kind of forced the next generation of those guys. So one thing that we focused on when we started this that was my push was I did not want to repeat the old Pittsburgh Comic-Con that used to be here. Like they had a lot of the same guests almost every year. I said I want some new blood. I want some of the old blood, and I just want awesome I will call them celebrities because to me, as a comic fan, they are celebrities. So kind of how you said, like other cons push actors as celebrities, these are celebrities. But everybody nerds out over something different, whether it's movies, TV, comics, cars, racing, curling, all kinds of stuff. There are
don't knock curling.
Hey,
you tried it.
I have. It's actually kind of fun. I have some friends down in Florida of all places that do that. It's fun. So we try to get obviously we have the support of the local Pittsburgh guys like Ron Friends, Scott McDaniel, Pat Olive, Bob Hack, Don Simpson.
You brought some examples, didn't you? Of some of the. Why don't you go ahead and show us some?
So Flash 28 from the second volume. It is written by William Mesner Loebs, who is one of our guests of the show.
He'll be at the show.
And he wrote for DC, Marvel. He's done Flash. He's done Wonder Woman. But this actually is kind of a minor key issue where Linda Park makes her first appearance in this book. Linda Park becomes the wife of Wally West. She was on the TV show in season 1 as like a love interest for Barry. So that was kind of cool.
This is why I have John answer the questions.
Yeah.
I'm like, who?
Right? Let's go to this one. So this is Superman 75 from Volume 2 of Superman.
Looks like Soup's having a bad day.
The infamous,
This is the infamous Death of Superman.
Is that the Doomsday thing?
Where Superman dies? Yes.
Oh.
If you want to flip through it after we're done, you can nerd over it.
White gloves.
So the artist on this book is Brett Breeding. He is coming to the show as well, and he is also friends with Ron Friends because they worked on Thor together. I believe some Spider-Man work as well.
I think so.
They're really good friends, and Ron talked to him and said how good a show it was. He knew Todd. And all of a sudden, we get an email that says, "Hey, can I come to your show?" Sure.
Now, when these guys show up like that, will they, simply be there to just talk to people, or will they actually have their artwork there for? And will they actually be drawing on site?
Yes. Yeah, and autographing is
a little bit of everything. Yeah.
Oh, see, that's good stuff.
It really depends on the person. Some guys just show up with a sketchbook and a bucket to put money in, and some guys show up with pages of work they've done. Wayne Foucher, who is kind of a legendary colorist for DC, inker for DC.
He's worked on everything. Kind of like Ron, he's worked on everything.
Yeah.
So name it. Name the characters.
He did a huge run of
Batman.
Impulse back in the 90s for DC, and he brings pages and pages and pages of original work of like the actual inked pages that they would convert into the comic page.
Really?
And you can just buy them from him.
He's an example of a guy, like, not everyone does everything. Wayne has told me he's uncomfortable sketching in front of people.
Oh,
He's
really?
just used to working in a drawing board environment at home, I assume, or studio, whatever. But some guys can't do it. Some guys can do it maybe literally with their eyes closed, and they'll do it. And like Ron will sketch very easily, and he'll have a conversation while he's sketching. It's kind of fun to watch almost.
Well, while we're talking about Ron, I should probably tell the story. The very first time I had him on the show, I happened to mention in the part of the interview that I was a big Spider-Man fan. And the show was over and everything was done, and I have an autograph book that I normally leave out, and I asked the guest to sign the autograph book. So I left the book out. I said, "Ron, would you mind signing the autograph book?" And to put the date on it, the date we were here. And I went back to the control room to make sure that everything had come out all right. And they said, "Yeah, everything came out fine." And I came back out again. I couldn't have been gone more than a minute, maybe a minute and a half. And in that time, he had not only signed the autograph book, but he had drawn a full figure pose of Spidey and his, when he
Oh,
kneels down and
nice.
has the one leg
Yeah.
out.
Wow.
And it was just ink, but he drew it on there, and I went, right, I still got that. That's kind of cool,
Yeah.
So these guys can actually do this stuff quickly, and it's not like, if you
Right.
go up to them and say, "Can you draw me this picture?" You got to come back hours later because they're actually
do.
that good.
Right. Oh, yeah. And it's kind of cool, like going to other conventions. I've gotten to see guys that we have not had here yet, but we are vetting for our show. Guys who do like painting is really really cool to just watch them work, and they're cool with it, and they'll talk to you and
While they're working.
And then like I got to watch Alex Maleev work at New York last year while I was waiting in line for Walt Simonson. So like the line was moving, and I just happened to be by his booth, and he was painting Black Bolt from the Inhumans, and to watch it go from this like flat picture to having all this depth just blew my mind how he
Really?
did that. It was crazy.
We had a guy
And,
paint Joker last year, Mike Kokomoto.
Akamoto? Yeah.
Is he coming again? I
Yes,
think he is.
yes,
I thought
yes.
it was on the
Yep.
list.
Oh, so he'll be there too, huh?
This is
He-
why he
I
has
think he
me.
airbrushed it,
He didn't
right?
know he was coming.
Oh no, I think I knew. But the problem is I look at so many lists, and he
Yeah,
hinted
yeah,
at
that's
something. We're already projecting this out for years and years. So
Right.
a lot of guys that said no for this year are kind of on deck to be
Go next
good
year.
candidates for next year.
Okay.
But things happen. They, at the end of the day, they have a job. They have to
Sure.
draw. They have deadlines.
Right.
Sure.
And that's a lot of these folks. That's how we don't get them.
Yeah.
Right.
It is a burden for them to walk away, and if they're traveling involved,
Yeah.
all those sorts of things play into it. But
Is there anybody else you
I
wanted to
have
highlight?
two
there?
more real quick.
Yeah.
So this is our Betty and Veronica #1 issue that we had made with Kennywood last year.
Okay.
And everyone who comes to the show gets this for free. And the artist for this is Robert Hack.
Okay.
He is the artist on Chilling Adventures of Sabrina by Archie, which is going to
Okay.
become a Netflix show this year.
definitely.
Really?
Yeah, I think it just hit a local paper about.
A live action or an
yeah,
animated?
live action.
Live action. Yeah.
It's amazing. If you haven't read that book, you should. It's very, very good. It's not kid friendly though.
Oh, okay.
So
Good
it's
to know.
definitely cool.
Not the Archie we grew up with, huh?
It is not.
Okay.
Neither is Riverdale.
That's true. So this last one will kind of lead into our beer for this year too, because I know Todd's itching to talk about that. So this happens to be one of the many, many covers by Joe Jusko that I happen to find
Yeah, I
very
bought
quickly.
this one right away. I don't know why.
Yeah. He has been working in the industry for a long time. He does a lot of awesomely good painted covers. He did a lot of work for Marvel. He did the Marvel card series back in the 90s.
A lot of Conan.
A lot of
covers,
Conan, like the
especially well painted.
magazines.
Yeah.
You talk about painters. That's primarily what he does. So
Yep.
Cool. Now, when I read this little card, it said down here, kind of in a nondescript way. I'm trying to find out where.
it's meant to tease you.
Yeah, I guess
Apparently
it
it
is.
worked.
If it made you
Yeah,
think
it
about
did,
it,
because
we
it
did
said,
our job.
We'll have custom beer just for the Comic-Con, and I went, who does that? Apparently you do. Well, what is that?
right.
How do you go about getting a custom beer for Comic-Con? What is?
I just sit around and have ideas all day long, and once in a while I pick up the phone and try to execute on one. It's as simple as that.
We gotta hold it.
I segued
All
it good for
This
you.
is actually it, right?
So that's the first year's beer.
This is probably one of the best labels I've seen.
I've been a big fan and supporter of that artist for a long time. When the beer thing came together, I said, you got to be my guy doing this beer label, and he supported. So this is year 1's beer. That's year 2's beer. I'm afraid we're filming a little early for year 3 beer, but that's the
so this is a
artwork on the
different
label.
one then. Oh,
Yeah, that was second.
Oh,
year.
you should probably mention that's actually Joe Linsner. You didn't actually use his name.
Right. This is Joe Linsner did year
Okay,
1.
well,
This
I
is
better hold
character.
up the second one because I held up the first one.
I guess let me tell the originating story first.
Yeah. How do you get the beer? I mean, who makes the beer for you?
So I love beer, love comics. I decided I want to combine the two if I want to do this, and again, kind of a bit of a party component to it. And I want to do kind of a limited edition thing. And I see so many beer labels. I'm like, man, I know so many artists, and I see beer labels that suck. I'm like, I can make these. I just connect the dots here. I can make these so much better. Well, I said, well, I'm going to do it. I was going to do it for one of my projects. So, I don't know. It wasn't as hard as people think. I make the beer. That is definitely not true. I've taken a very short stab at brewing, and I hated it, and was bad at it. I joke all the time. I decided I'm the most important person in the equation. I'm the guy that at the end of the day will plunk down his money and buy the beer. So without me, nobody gets to make the beer. So I'm going to continue to fill that slot in the food chain. This is just on an obviously grander scale. So I've been a big fan of Helltown Brewing for a long time. They've made a lot of great stuff. Got to be a little friendly with them. So when this all came together as a concept, I approached them and I said, guys, what's it take for me to buy an entire batch of beer? Like, how much beer is that? Obviously, financially, what kind of timetable are we looking at? All those elements.
Now, where is that brewery?
Helltown's in Mount Pleasant, kind of
okay.
around Connellsville area.
Yeah,
a little
sure.
town. So one thing led to another, and the answer was, here it is, and my answer was, I can make that work. So in doing so, they made me an entire batch of beer. They bottled the whole thing. I bought the whole thing. I even invested in a nice cap. There's no way to zoom into that. You can show that off later. That was expensive, so I skipped that second year. Again, wanted to make a punch first year. Like,
Sure.
wanted to make this as cool as possible. I spared no expense.
There you go.
As I like to movie
Dr.
guy.
Hammond.
Very nice, very nice. I spent Dr. Hammond money to get this done. So part of it too was I wanted a beer that would last. So certain styles of beer. This is a Russian Imperial Stout, and they barrel aged it, which gives it a nice bourbon barrel character.
Are
whiskey
we having the
barrel
same
texture.
beer this year?
It's very similar, so
Okay,
I'll jump to that in a minute if you don't mind.
Sure.
Hey, John knows. This could be a special edition on just beer if you want.
I think I'm going to go take a nap while we
Yeah,
finish the story. It'll be
Tell
fun.
the quick version. So when all that went down, so then I had to figure out, okay, well, how can I do this legally? So I obviously enlisted a lawyer. I got to figure out a way, because I can't sell the beer, but it turns out there's, I can sell tickets to a party if I'm serving the beer, and make part of the element is that you get to take a bottle home, and obviously the artist was there to sign it.
Oh, cool.
And all that. That's kind of how it's done. So it's a little painful. We display the bottles in all the stores to just show it off. It's a little painful. People are like, oh, how can I buy the beer? Like, well, you can't. You kind of, it's just come to the convention. And part of the kind of the shine to this is it brings beer people to the convention.
Yeah.
So maybe that's their nerd element. And I think year one, we had the metric figured out pretty accurately. Half the people that were there were just there for the beer. Half the people there were just comic people that got exposed to beer through that. So if we kind of cross-pollinate a little bit, pretty proud of that too. So bring the two nerd communities together. Anyway, so Helltown did a great job. Second year, went back to them again. The reason it's a smaller bottle is they had a bottling line set up that was not geared for this function. They couldn't shift gears, they're busy doing their own thing. So this year we are back to this format. So it'll be this with this art on the label. That's kind of a close-up version. It's a full figure of her on the label. And again, Joe Jessica will be there, who painted it. He was very excited. Joe and I have been working on this for almost 3 years. He couldn't make it last year. One thing led to another. It's a big juggling of schedules for the most part. So this was the year, and like very early on, it was like, oh, you got time to paint the label? It's like, you couldn't wait to do it, so he was pretty excited. So
the whole concept here is Comic-Con. It started out as a celebration of comics, or graphic novels, if you will. And the Three Rivers Comic-Con goes back to the origins. It celebrates comics, and especially the artists who help put these things together. And if that's what you're interested in, then this is where you need to be. It is the Three Rivers Comic-Con. It will be held on the 19th and the 20th of May. That's a Saturday and a Sunday.
Correct.
And it will be right up by Century 3 Mall, actually a little bit behind it. And there'll be plenty of signs there for people. And it starts at
10 a.m. for VIPs and 11 a.m. for general admission on Saturday.
And it will run until
7 p.m. on Saturday.
There you go. So make sure you get on out there and check it out. Little local flavor, and of course, get yourself one of those collectible beers. I'd like to thank John and Todd for stopping by today. It is the Three Rivers Comic-Con, and if you're into comics, this is where you want to be. Until the next time, I'm Fiore, and I will see you in the theater.